can quite understand why people are quick to dismiss director and writer Wes Anderson's films as opting for style over substance, especially on apps like TikTok where his distinct and whimsical style has become a trend. When you only see seconds-long clips of the symmetrical and uniform mise-en-scenes, or hear pieces of the austere dialogue,
She was shaking like a shitting dog.
Truly.
you would say he's overrated. But there is a reason why he's become a household name within the film community. His films are beloved not just for their aesthetic value, the way he plays with the language of film, but it's because he meticulously crafts stories and imagery in his own voice and lens. The compelling characters within his stories, while stoic and kind of robotic, exhibit elements of ourselves. From the Tenenbaums and the Whitmans who carry parent wounds into adulthood and act like children, to Sam and Susie who are forced into mature roles as children due to a lack of stable identities. And he doesn't just discuss inter- and intrapersonal relationships in his films, he tackles themes of privatization of art,
Modern art, our specialty, starting now.
the changing architecture and behaviors under a dictatorship, and so much more.
I thought I might try my hand at writing a historical novel set during the times of feudalism.
So, as a fan of the filmmaker's work and in anticipation for the Phoenician scheme, which I haven't seen yet since I live in the Southern Hemisphere, here is my personal ranking of Wes Anderson's films. Asteroid City is a film that feels like someone put Wes Anderson in a blender with 2001: A Space Odyssey and Albert Camus and just like a bunch of other things. It's a very meta film, very philosophical. When I watched it, it felt like I was reading a philosophy paper at 3 in the morning, thinking I finally got the gist of what the author is getting at, only to find myself more and more confused. Don't get me wrong, I appreciate its themes, and it's certainly his most existential and I guess experimental. For how light and bright this film is, it tackles dark and unsettling themes on love, grief, purpose, especially I think for artists, writers especially, and actors who embody these characters. It's also the one that felt the most like a chore for me to watch. To be fair, when I watched it, I had read Jonathan Seagull and watched The Good Place and other adjacent stories and text. So I guess I was suffering from, philosophical media fatigue. And this film doesn't really give you a chance to breathe. It breaks the fourth wall all of a sudden, right when you have this realization, and it's like you have a hard time catching up. So it's definitely a skill issue on my part, but there has to be a film at the very bottom, and this is the one that I just didn't really like as much as the rest. It was very chaotic, which is saying something because The French Dispatch also exists.
I need a breath of fresh air.
Okay, but you won't find one.
Bottle Rocket is a good debut feature, and it's Wes Anderson before Wes Anderson. Despite this film being in the realm of reality, it's not laid out like a storybook like the rest of his films, but it still feels and looks very much Wes Anderson. These two emotionally stunted men create a meticulous plan for a series of heists only for them to fail. This particular scene is still pretty funny to me.
Do you have bigger bags for atlases or dictionaries, sir?
There is miscommunication, romance, an excessive amount of politeness. I don't really have much to say about the film. I enjoyed it a lot, but it just doesn't really compete with his other works. So while making this list, I actually completely forgot about The Life Aquatic, and for that I think I'm going to have to put it in the bottom. I don't think any of his films are unnecessary or bad or lack vision. In fact, this specific one is so well thought out, and I remember being so excited to watch this because, when you're young, you kind of have a marine biology phase. It's whimsical and depressing and angsty with a touch of Oedipus complex, but the other way around, kind of. It just doesn't really compete with the rest of his films, though. I'm not trying to discount other people's feelings or thoughts on this, and it's the same with his other films. What other people can connect to, I just can't. And movies, despite their ability to be judged objectively, they're still subjective art forms. And I just wasn't really able to connect that well with Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou. I also don't really know how I feel about the whole Filipino pirate thing, since I don't think there are Tagalog pirates, but it was pretty funny when Bill, not Bill Murray, Bill the character, was speaking Tagalog, because I barely understood a word, and those pirates were justified in shutting him up. I think this is also one of the few films under his belt with a thickly outlined central figure, and Steve Zissou is a character that dominates the narrative without overshadowing the rest of the cast. Another thing I also like is that for all of the water in this film, the humor is as dry as ever.
Don't point that gun at him. He's an unpaid intern.
And lastly, big fan of So George's Bowie covers. The art direction for Isle of Dogs is impeccable, and the film manages to be the perfect amount of emotional without it manipulating you to feel things for sympathy points. I was engaged the entire time. I wanted to follow these dogs guiding the little pilot. I don't want to dismiss the film for its Orientalism without actually analyzing it, but the first time I watched it, it did feel like this might be Anderson's Lost in Translation, especially with Bill Murray and Scarlett Johansson speaking English in Japan. Although I think that Isle of Dogs does a better job at handling translation. I highly recommend Thomas Flight's video essay to learn more about how Japanese audiences receive the film and how language and communication or miscommunication plays an integral part within the narrative. As for the director's Orientalism, I recommend Rowie Deschanel's video essay on it. As an English speaker, I had a wonderful time watching it and following along with the story. And as someone who talks to my dog constantly, I appreciate the parallels, how we struggle to comprehend each other, but we try through context clues like tonality and gestures. But it's not really up to me to say that it's okay to use another's language and culture to drive a story. I did like the message of this film, which is basically we fear what we cannot understand and we vilify what we fear. That is true for Chief.
I guess he scared me.
And for Mayor Kobayashi, as M. Gustav put it, the most dreadful and unattractive person only needs to be loved, and they will open up like a flower. Three brothers meet up in India on the train, the Darjeeling Limited, as organized by the eldest, Francis. And there's this iconic opening sequence of Bill Murray trying to catch up to a train, only to be overtaken by a much younger man who happens to be his son, Peter. Peter is one of the two younger brothers of Francis, the other being Jack. The rich siblings travel through India for self-discovery while carrying their deceased father's designer luggage and Francis's assistant basically down the cabin. The film, for all of its warmth and brotherly love, uses India as a mere backdrop, an exotic place where rich kids could run off to solve their problems a la Eat, Pray, Love, which leaves a sour taste in your mouth. But overall, it's a fun film and doesn't force character development. The brothers don't really discover anything about their father or much about themselves. They do find their estranged mother, but it doesn't really lead to anything. They simply go on an adventure, fight, and make up like siblings do.
You don't love me! Yes, I do! I love you too, but I'm gonna mace you in the face!
And enjoy the ride, and that's okay. Actually, they do learn to let go of the literal and metaphorical baggage they inherited from their parents. This movie fares better than the previous films for me, as the dynamic between the three pulls you in, and with the ghost of their father guiding the narrative, it adds a bit of mystery to it. The viewing experience of the Darjeeling Limited, for me, is similar to watching Succession. Wes Anderson was actually pregnant with the Royal Tenenbaum when he was making Rushmore. His framing and composition, storybook structure, despite it being one of the only two movies he's made that's rooted in reality, and the use of 60s and 70s classic rock were all present in Rushmore. To have established such a distinct style so early on in his career is one of the reasons why I am such a fan. The same goes for the likes of Sofia Coppola, Robert Eggers, and so on. Rushmore, while not the strongest contender on this list, is one of the most well-made films about aspiring artists who struggle with the idea of growing up or staying still, especially with Max wanting to stay in Rushmore because that's all he's known, while simultaneously concentrating all of his effort into becoming a writer instead of a brilliant student.
He's one of the worst students we've got.
This is a coming of age not just for Max but for the auteur himself. Moonrise Kingdom is one of those films you watch because you found them on Tumblr or Pinterest, especially this specific still, or I guess GIF. I enjoy this movie, and the love that blooms between these two young lovers just reminds you of those days when you were young and you thought you knew everything about the world and about love. Much like the Darjeeling Limited, the color palette is warmer than his other films. The story is set in a remote island in America where nothing much happens. But for Sam and Susie, their little island feels like the whole world. They carry all that they value and follow a trail that leads them to their own slice of paradise. But not without some hiccups. This is a movie you watch on a summer afternoon with your friends. I enjoyed the performances of the kids, especially during the final act and the whole Great Flood symbolism that ties into their first meeting when Susie was a bird, and about this feeling when you're a teenager, shedding your old self as you grow into a person you want to become. If the brothers in the Darjeeling Limited were trying to find themselves and kind of failed, in Moonrise Kingdom, not only did the grown-ups track down Sam and Susie, the two kids who have always been othered have slowly discovered or created themselves. While this isn't the best Wes Anderson for me, I feel like I would be ready to defend this film if need be.
You just want to be together. What's wrong with that?
So before you come at me, no, I'm not trying to be different or contrarian. I do like this film and I agree with the consensus that this is a masterpiece. I don't think I am at a stage in my life where I can truly appreciate this film and its message in its full extent. I understand its existential themes and can identify with this Fox who is viewed by society as a failed writer. Mr. Fox, despite being a fox, is human and complex, and so is every character from this film. And I love it to the point of actually reading Roald Dahl's novel. I enjoyed the adaptation more than the original text, actually. Each frame is meticulously crafted to the point where it feels like God actually took the time to put every strand of hair on those creatures. And the artists behind his films really do leave me in awe. Whether it be for their work on miniatures and large sets or figures for his stop-motion animations, the story of Fantastic Mr. Fox is one you can't truly reduce to a singular thing. I might circle back on this movie one day, 10 years from now, at 35, hanging onto my youth, nostalgia gripping me by the neck, and revel in its perfection. But for now, I think it's fair to put it at number 4. So, depending on the day, I would say either of these films are my second favorite from his filmography. The Grand Budapest Hotel was my first Wes Anderson. I discovered his films through Tumblr, We Heart It. The stills from that film were gaining momentum right when everyone had black and white or baby blue symmetrical aesthetic Instagram feeds. Then eventually we all started to love millennial pink. I remember having just the best time watching Willem Dafoe chase Ray Fiennes and Tony Revolori. I didn't understand much about how to critically dissect and analyze films. When I first watched it, I didn't possess the faculties to know whether a film was objectively good. I just knew at that age I loved the film, and as I rewatch and improve my media literacy, I find something new to love about it.
Who wouldn't? At the Grand Budapest, sir. It's an institution.
The color palette in this film is exquisite. In its glory days, the hotel was bright, soft, and romantic. In 1968, it became a neutral-toned, mid-century modern lover's heaven, but devoid of any soul. I don't have anything novel or profound to say about this film that hasn't already been said. It just stands out among his films because it's like a perfectly ripe fruit.
You're not getting boy with apple, you goddamn little fruit.
Every element he's tackled in his previous films are so well polished in this one, from the humor and storytelling to production design and direction. Even his shootout scene was done flawlessly. And from the reviews that I've been reading, I was introduced to Stefan Zweig.
I love you. Abfahren!
So the Royal Tenenbaums was the first Wes Anderson that actually broke my heart. I felt like a mirror was placed in front of me from being called adopted at a young age, despite it not being true, but the event basically unconsciously guiding my every adolescent decision. The film just hit harder when I rewatched it in my early 20s because of how well it captures the feeling of being in limbo, growing up so fast, chasing achievement after achievement, only to run dry, stuck in the mud as every other peer glides over you. But life isn't a race, and that's what this film reminds me of. I discovered These Days by Nico, and while I don't like the artist, the song has gotten me through the worst. I might be trauma dumping at this point, but this film just has so much heart and is one of the few films that I could really connect to. It's about forgiveness, not that you owe it to others, especially the parents you have a complicated relationship with, but that it's possible if they or you really try. And it's also about forgiving yourself, learning to let go of the glory days and the rock bottoms. For a set of characters that are quite deep into the tropes that they're based on, they still feel authentic and capture your heart. I will cry every time I watch this movie. I have so much love for this film. It's actually in my top 4 favorites.
I'm naked, Mrs. Clemens.
This was genuinely the only thing that got me out of a creative rut, reminding me of the days when my mom would leave me at the magazine stand of a grocery store or at a bookstore, so I would peruse the open magazines and books. This was the film that made me feel like my lifelong dream of becoming a writer doesn't have to be just a pipe dream. Each vignette is unique to the writer that it's dedicated to. I know this film has mixed reviews.
It stinks!
Well done, Moses.
And many have reduced it to Wes Anderson parodying himself, but it means a lot to me that writing as an art form while slowly dying is still being revered and revived. I can talk for hours about this film, and maybe I'll write an essay dedicated to it soon enough, but for now, all I can say is that it ticked all of the boxes for me.
Pourquoi il y participe? Elle devrait maintenir une neutralité journalistique.
Mais n'importe quoi.
La neutralité journalistique est un concept désuet.
Ça n'existe pas.
The rewatch value is great, and I find something new I love about it every time because it's such a complex film and it has 3 plot lines. Wes Anderson experimented a lot with his style, especially the car chase scene, which I really loved. His world building of the fictional city of Ennui is so great.
The dangerous accidents, the constant traffic, the high...
There's references and allusions to existing media and artists or writers, and it has that charming whimsy that is present in all of his films. It's 10 out of 10 in my book.
No crying.
We have come to associate style and beauty with the inane, especially with the rise of plastic surgery and beauty standards being shoved down our throats that led to the rise of the iPhone face, or making hollow artwork from Basquiat wannabe rich kids and AI. But film as a medium has always been about beautiful compositions and movement and color grading. It used to be called motion pictures because they are artworks come to life. This might be one of the few times that I defend a man, but it's simply not fair to dismiss his films as pretty but shallow movies from a man who needs everything to be symmetrical to a mechanical degree. We can have nuanced discussions of his films, especially when it comes to his Orientalism and the white male gaze, but you can't deny that there is so much thought put into his craft and so much love.